You and I spent some time together on a show previously, and I was so fascinated by what you're doing proactively. I said at the end that I really wanted to have some uninterrupted time to talk about this because I think you are on the cutting edge of what we need to be doing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a lot of work, as you know. These issues aren't straightforward. They're complicated, and I think there's a lot of missing pieces. And I think education around mental health in schools is one of the missing pieces.
Well, I do too. And when you talk about wellness with these young people, talk about what you mean. Give me the mission statement so all of our listeners can understand what it is you're doing. Because as I said to you earlier, I think it's a model that people should adopt across the country. I think it has some real tenets in it for parents. Talk about, I guess I call it your mission statement, what you're doing.
I think the easiest way to break it down is if you think about physical health, we start teaching about physical health really pre-kindergarten. And we have lessons about physical health and how you mature and how you grow and how you change all the way through adulthood. There's even physical health programs at every business and company in the world for people who are adults. But where you really start setting up habits is when you're young. And the second largest period of brain growth is between the ages of 12 and 25. And we know that what you do in that time period really matters. It really makes a difference. And so the mission at my school and the mission with my curriculum is to teach skills about mental health the same way you would learn about physical health. So it's not a therapeutic approach. It's not sitting down and analyzing yourself. It's understanding, here's a definition of mental health. These are coping mechanisms. Here's the mental health literacy or vocabulary you can use. Here's how you spot differences between normal emotions and mental health disorders. Here's how you help a friend. But it's taking a public health approach that already exists for physical health and adapting it to mental health.
Let's talk about that for a minute because I want to put some specifics on this. We're not talking about asking or empowering kids to self-diagnose.
No, 100%.
But I think sometimes people can jump to the conclusion when we say we're not talking about therapy, we're talking about education. And you're right, we start teaching people about their physical health very early on. What you're talking about here is making part of the curriculum to have classes where you sit down and talk to kids about what mental health is, what mental illness is. Are you talking about red flags? What are you talking about? Let me just let you say.
Sure. So let's start with the actual definition of mental health. In a large parts of today's society, most people think the words mental health means someone who has a problem. They don't think about how you take care of yourself. And so there's been this movement of, do we change the words? Do we call it brain health? Do we call it brain development? What do we call it? Most young people today are still using the words mental health. I think it's important to give them a clear definition. Mental health isn't having a problem. It's how you address the challenges in your life. Much like physical health isn't having cancer and diabetes and a broken leg and like an injury. It's about how you take care of your physical health. Mental health, from the start, you have to have a clear definition of it. And if you don't have a clear definition of it, you end up with so much vagueness and so much self-diagnosing and so many confusing aspects of it that it has to start there. So we do a couple lessons just on, hey, this is what mental health is, and this is what it isn't, so that we're on the same page.
I've always thought about it, and I'm not suggesting we use this term because you guys have this pretty well figured out, but I've always thought about it and talked to kids about it in terms of mental hygiene, of taking care and cleaning up your mind, cleaning up if you're having anxiety about, worries about, concerns about things, that you're doing something about them and not letting them fester.
Yeah.
So what is the definition of mental health that you give these young people, and how early on can you give them a definition that they really grasp?
So the definition we use, the technical definition we use, is from the World Health Organization, which is a person who's able to manage normal amounts of stress, contribute to their community, and like be productive in different ways, right? The definition we use in school informally is that mental health isn't having a problem, it's how you address challenges in your life. You can start that definition as young as kindergarten. And if you start teaching it in a productive, proactive way, the same way you would teach physical health, then it allows young people to feel like they're a part of their mental health. What we tend to do in our society is wait till someone has a problem, then tell them something's wrong, and then you're not a part of that. You're trying to react or respond to your issue instead of being proactive and looking at it from a place of like, okay, this is an aspect of my life. And that's a critical difference.
I get so many letters, not letters, but emails from young people, particularly high school, but some middle school also, that say, I don't know when I have a problem that has risen to the level that I need to ask for help from a school counselor or a pastor or even a friend. They've asked me to talk about it on the air before. How do they know when something has become pathological or abnormal? How do you answer that question if you get asked that?
When the level of whatever you're experiencing, whether it's eating disorders, depression, anxiety, whatever it is, because there's so many different options for them, reaches a point where you can't do what you typically do. We can't say normal because there is no normal when it comes to the variance of
Right.
each individual, their environment, their biology, everything, right? But when whatever you're experiencing reaches a point where you can no longer do what you typically do for an extended amount of time, that's when you need help. If you think about this, though, it's the same thing with physical health. How many times have we seen young people be like, I'm not sure if my ankle's sprained or if it's broken, but I can't run the same way I used to run, and I can't do the same things I used to do. And yes, there are still people resistant to telling a coach or telling a parent, but at some point it gets to a point where they're like, hey, I just can't do what I used to do. Let's get an x-ray and see if it's broken or if it's sprained, and what do I need to do about it? So again, it's using that similar public health approach of, you can't decide it on your own, but when it gets to a point where you can't do what you're typically doing, that's where it's time to talk about it.
Yeah. I love the way you say it. I've always told people that if it's interfering with your pursuit of healthy goals or your pattern of healthy living, then it's time to raise your hand. I love the fact that you say it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's an eating disorder or anxiety or depression, loneliness, whatever it is, if there's something going on with you mentally or emotionally that's interfering with what you typically do or the pursuit of goals that you have set, it can be something as simple as an inability to concentrate the way that you had before. And I love the fact that you say for an extended period of time, because everybody has a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
You wake up and it's like, I should have never gotten out of bed today. This just wasn't my day. But then tomorrow you get a good night's sleep and you wake up and you're good to go again. So it's about patterns. And if something persists, then it's time to say, hey, but what you're doing, and this is why I think this is such a model that people need to follow, is you're talking about it before they're in crisis.